Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us today to listen to a presentation about Fortinet's SD-WAN solution. I am Michael Weir. I'll be your presenter today. I am the NSE 7 Certified Technical Account Manager for Fortinet at Ingram Micro. I'll be walking you through this. Let's take a look at the walk we're going to take today. Here's our table of contents divided into 4 sections. The first one being just a facts, ma'am. Second one being you get what you pay for. Third being but. And then fourth being while we're at it. So let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start, and look at just the facts, ma'am. So this section is going to say a lot about third-party validation of Fortinet solutions. Obviously, a manufacturer can write tons of things about how great they are, but when the proof comes down to it, the pudding is really taking these third-party tests, also customer experiences, but we're just going to look at third-party assessments right now because they are the least subjective. So here's the Gartner WAN Edge Quadrant. This is their way of saying SD-WAN. And you'll notice that Fortinet is right up there at the top. We would consider ourselves third, right between the leader and the challenger quadrant right there. And you can see there are 2 people ahead of us. I'm not going to say their names, but they are relatively well-known solutions, but I think we have some definite advantages over them. For example, if we look at Gartner's Secure WAN Edge infrastructure, you'll see that Fortinet is #1 by a large margin in that one. Anytime you're looking at security, you should look to Fortinet, and of course everybody should be looking at security unless you like having your information on the dark web, in which case I have some concerns. The NSS Labs SD-WAN value map looks relatively similar this time, with Fortinet far ahead in total cost of ownership per megabit per second and mean opinion score. Now, I know I said we weren't going to be using any manufacturer numbers, but this statistic, just in performance, you sort of have to use the manufacturer numbers just because there's no real other way to put together this graphic. So, as you can see, Fortinet, their FG40F, F-series being the ones with the dedicated SD-WAN processing in them, is far faster in all the categories. You'll also notice we're the only ones with a published SSL inspection performance number. 3 of our competitors up there, they don't do SSL inspection, and the fourth that says NA is because it is a roadmap feature, and we all know about roadmaps. And then you can see our threat protection throughput is also far superior to the rest of them. Section number 2, you get what you pay for? Now I'll show you why there's a question mark in this. First, we're going to look at the NSS Labs value report for cost per megabit per second over 4 years. Now, that's a very crazy sounding metric, so I'm just going to go ahead and read exactly what it is described as rather than try to explain it myself. The TCO per megabit per second metric provides guidance as to whether the price for an SD-WAN is higher or lower than alternatives such as MPLS or a competing SD-WAN product. A high price could indicate a premium based on features, bandwidth, service level agreements, brand recognition, or a level of customer service. Conversely, a high price could also be a penalty for purchasing an underperforming product. So, looking at NSS Labs value report on this, you'll notice there is one competitor conspicuously missing. They are a competitor who has consistently had very mixed scores in the NSS Labs testing, so they just stopped submitting. And we have Fortinet way out in front in this one. But let's get down to the true meaning of it here, the you get what you pay for index, or so I like to call it. NSS Labs value report, this is purchase price, value, and the ratio of value to price. Now, if the ratio is 1-to-1, it means you get what you pay for. If the ratio is less than 1-to-1, it means you may have gotten ripped off a little bit. And if the ratio is more than 1-to-1, it means you're getting even more than you paid for. And you can see Fortinet is far out in front of this. Now, a lot of people are going to look at this and they're going to want to say but. So our third selection is but. The #1 objection by a long shot is, but Fortinet doesn't have a dedicated SD-WAN controller. To that, I say, why would you want 2 different devices when you can do the job with one? I mean, Fortinet's secure SD-WAN solution, the controller is in the FortiGate. It's right in the OS code. There's no dedicated appliance. It's all one management pane. This means less points of failure, and it means you're not buying extras to get the job done. Objection number 2, but I already have a firewall. What I would say is let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone and upgrade that too. Now obviously some people are going to say, well, you're asking them to spend money more or whatever. So here's one other thing I would say is you don't actually have to buy the UTM at the same time that you're buying the FortiGate. This can be added at any time later. So you can use your FortiGate for SD-WAN right now, and then when your current firewall kicks the bucket or fails you, then we'll pick up that end of things too. Also, if you're having some trepidation about going from one brand of firewall to another, Fortinet offers a FortiConverter product that converts the third-party configuration over to a Fortinet configuration. And Fortinet is also tried and tested when it comes to secure SD-WAN solutions and security in general. We're the third overall deployed SD-WAN device in the world. So if you're killing two birds with one stone, let's kill it with two good things. The third objection is, but the licensing is confusing. When people say this, they more or less mean they're not paying for an SD-WAN license, so they're unsure if they're getting the feature. To which I would say, would you rather pay more for a second license, or would you rather get it for free? Because SD-WAN is part of the base FortiOS, so you can transition into SD-WAN without having to buy more licenses or more hardware. And the rationale behind this is soon SD-WAN is going to be ubiquitous. So why would we make customers pay for something that's just become a normal feature, is going to be required in a lot of deployments? Why make it a premium gated feature? Then section number 4, while we're at it, I want to reflect back on the security industry leader aspect of things. Fortinet is the #1 cybersecurity company in the world, and these are Fortinet statistics. But you'll see they have a huge amount of market capitalization, a lot of billing. They have the most patents of any firewall manufacturer. They are 1/3 of all global firewall shipments. They have 440,000 plus customers worldwide, and why that's important is the Fortinet Security Fabric, which ties everything together, both local solutions and globally. Each one of those devices can act like a sensor and feed security information back to the network. So effectively, you got a 440,000 plus device network feeding you security intelligence at all times. We also have 30 plus cybersecurity product lines. So it's not just the firewall, it's not just the SD-WAN, it's also the switch, the access point, the mail device, the NAC, NOC, SOC, SIM, SOAR functionality. We could go on with that. As I alluded to before, we're very high in the Gartner UTM Magic Quadrant. And I just wanted to pull a quick highlight, and that is that we have the most NSS Labs recommendations for the security categories in all of these things. The person who is in last place there, like I said, does not submit for most of the NSS Labs testing, so that's a little tough to measure, but our closest competitor in the Gartner quadrant, you see lags pretty far behind us on all of these things. And then I wanted to add one extra section that reflects on something I didn't do very well in elementary school, and that's play well with others. So Fortinet and the FortiGate products are very open to customization. So they have an open API. Everything runs on industry standard protocols. The FortiGate itself can input JSON commands and REST APIs right into it. And we have integrations with other vendors, such as all of these. Now this is a snapshot in 2019 and not even a complete snapshot. We also have a wide variety of devices, as I mentioned before, the switch, the AP, NOC, SOC, SIM, SOAR, EDR, all of that stuff. But I would like to pull out specifically the SD-WAN ones, which is the FortiGate. So when you look at other brands, you're paying for megabits per second, and oftentimes there's a relatively low cap out. Since the Fortinet SD-WAN solution is right in their base OS for all of their FortiGates, you can use any FortiGate for SD-WAN. We have Tabletop Series, which is up to 310 megabits per second all services, Enterprise up to 7 gigs, High-end series up to 100 gigs all services, and then we have configurable chassis series. The biggest one I've ever built personally was 120 gigabits per second all services. And I challenge you to go find another vendor who can do 120 gigabits per second over SD-WAN with all security features enabled, including SSL decryption, etc., etc. And I don't think you will. And then just here's a quick visualization of all the Fortinet products and how they tie together. And as I said before, the advantage to each of these is that each piece shares information with everything else. So if your FortiSandbox detects a zero-day threat, makes a quick definition for it, says this is malicious, it sends it out to your FortiGate to say, hey, listen, this is something new for you to look for. And I'll push it out to the other devices in your network and do the same thing. Also, you can sign up to get micro updates. It's free of charge. It's just a checkbox that you turn on of these things coming from the FortiGate Labs itself. So, I thank you for coming on. Questions or comments, you see a few ways to contact me there below. Feel free to do any of those at any time, and until then, thank you very much and hope to see you again soon.